What is Bitcoin? How does it work? And why is it important? So, if you jump onto coinmarketcap.com, which is what you see here, this site lists the entire crypto market by market cap, which is how much money is invested into it. As you can see, there's 2.4 million plus cryptos at this point. And this will list them from number 1, which is Bitcoin, all the way to 2.4 million, and they're listed by market cap. So Bitcoin is number 1 because the most money is invested into it, which right now it's sitting at about $1.3 trillion, 1.27 trillion. And it's sitting at $64,000. So where does the price come from? Well, that, market cap, price, and circulating supply is an equation, right? So if you take the market cap and divide it by the circulating supply, you'll get the price. So how much money is invested into it, divide it by how many coins are in the market, and that's what the price is. And you can literally figure this out yourself if you take this number Okay, let's just do it ourselves because copy and paste is not going to work apparently. So 1.2 trillion, so let's just make it 1.27. Oh, actually we need to just add a bunch of zeros here. That's a million, a billion. Okay, so 1.27 trillion divided by 19.7 million, because that's how many coins are in circulation. And there you go, 64,000. So that's an important correlation to know in general, because that's how you can tell something like, Dogecoin going to $10 is almost impossible, because if you were to do the math on that, the market cap would have to go to a ridiculous amount, surpassing Bitcoin, surpassing like all the money invested in markets in the entire globe. So I don't think all of that's going to go into Dogecoin. It could get to $1 though. I could see that happening, but let's not start speculating here. Let's focus on Bitcoin. So why is it important? So let's figure out what are the properties of Bitcoin and why is it important, right? So the circulating supply and the total supply is a big factor of what makes it important. So there's only 21 million Bitcoin, and there will only ever be 21 million Bitcoin. And right now there's 19,698,631 in circulation. So that's how many are out in the market. And there's still, 1.4 million Bitcoin that have to be mined. So what is mining? Well, you need to understand how the network works first to kind of understand that. So Bitcoin is a decentralized network. And what does that mean? So your bank is a centralized network, and pretty much everything in the traditional financial system is centralized networks, meaning there's one place in the center, your bank, many other things, but a bank is the best example, and then a bunch of people interact with the bank, but all their data and their money and everything is stored in one place. Bitcoin is a decentralized distributed network, so it looks more like this, where the network and all the transactions, or the ledger of all the transactions, picture a book of all the transactions that the network has ever seen. Normally the bank keeps it all in one spot, but Bitcoin is kept on every single computer around the world that's running a node. And then when you make a transaction, it's checked by every single computer around the world until it gets what's called a consensus. You'll hear that in crypto a lot, that yes, this is indeed true, and then the transaction goes through, in short, and that's what's happening. And what the miners do is they process those transactions, and then they get paid for processing the transaction. So every time a bunch of transactions happen, they all get put into a block, which is then mined or processed basically by a bunch of computers around the world, and then they get a piece of that block for processing that transaction, and all of those transactions go through. So it's very hard to make this a simple explanation, but basically the traditional system has one point that processes everything and everyone interacts with it, but it also creates one point of failure where all the data is stored. So privacy leaks, if that gets hacked, all your data is lost and distributed to wherever. And also, if this goes down, the whole thing goes down. Where in a distributed network, even if you lose half the nodes or the computers processing it, you still have the other half. The only way Bitcoin ever gets destroyed is if all of the nodes are destroyed at the same time, which is theoretically impossible, because by the time you destroy the last one, another one comes back online. So it kind of makes it indestructible and incorruptible. The other thing with Bitcoin is that no one owns or controls it. So it was created in 2008 after the housing market crashed. That was when it was incepted, basically. And it was a reaction to a corrupt, over-controlled supply of money, which we'll get into. But it basically is not owned by anyone. It's not controlled by anyone. It's just a protocol that exists and functions in and of itself that people can interact with. And that's really important in today's world, because governments control and manipulate money and destroy currencies and countries by doing that. That's the downfall of pretty much every currency in history of the world. So this is the first currency ever in the world that can't be controlled and isn't owned by anyone. It was all we know. If you go to the, you can Google the Bitcoin white paper. And you can read what the creator of Bitcoin wrote about it, which is a peer-to-peer electronic cash system. All we know is that it was made by some guy named Satoshi Nakamoto, who's remained anonymous, and nobody knows where he is. He hasn't been active. None of his wallets have been active in years. He basically just created this, launched it for the people, and then left. So it's made by an anonymous person, which is it's done on purpose that way, because that gives the government and any entity that would try to destroy it no one to attack. There's no one to sue. There's no one to... You see the government attacking all these companies and all these things that are basically trying to be middlemen all over again, like the banks were and still are today, to try to make money. But the true crypto form is you have your own wallet, your coins are in your own wallet, and we just have a peer-to-peer system. We don't need any people. We don't need any middlemen. Similar to like how the Pirate Bay first started, which is a great example. That was a peer-to-peer system that was created for people to just share files, movies, music, whatever. And the government tried to destroy it, and because there's no one who they could really attack. I mean, originally, if you look into it, there were some people who originally made it, but Satoshi obviously saw that he couldn't be known, or he would be attacked as well. But those people were attacked, and they were prosecuted for just creating software. So then the community basically took over and just made infinite copies of the Pirate Bay, because they had the source code. And the government tried to take it down and eventually just gave up because it's impossible. They'd have to just ban people from using the internet because they can't attack the thousands of them that are out there. But that's a whole other story. What's important here is that the peer-to-peer system flourished Because it's not owned by anyone, it's not controlled by anyone, it's just owned and controlled by the people interacting with each other, and they can't prosecute everybody. So now we have a money system that's peer-to-peer. They have no one to attack or sue or put out of business to get rid of it. It just is a protocol that exists that we can interact with our wallets. And that was by design. So definitely worth the read, to read through the white paper here. But the value in Bitcoin is what I'm explaining here, is that it's a system that is distributed, so it can't be destroyed. There's no central point to be corrupted or controlled. You can't shut it down because you'd have to destroy all of them at the same time, which is basically impossible. It's also the first global asset class in general. Crypto in general is the first global asset class. Like, you can't buy stocks in another country. You can't, like, everyone in the world can't buy US stocks and put their money into something. You know, there's people in tons of countries with crazy inflation, worse than, you know, there's countries with like 100% inflation, which means they just lose all their buying power every year. And until crypto came around, you know, they didn't have access to put their money into something that wouldn't just deteriorate completely, which is what we're getting into next, is inflation. But now there's a global market that anyone can put their money into, and so we have the first global asset, first distributed network like this, first peer-to-peer cash system. But then another really important thing here is that it's the first deflationary asset, which is where the max finite supply comes in handy. So the reason why that's important is because it's more like digital gold, because there's only so many of them. And arguably, some people say that it's better than gold because we're constantly finding new gold reserves. You know, it's not really finite. We don't know how much there is of gold. But it is valuable because it's scarce. There's only so much of it. Well, Bitcoin is scarce, and we actually know how much of it there is, and that's all there's ever going to be. Which is why this is important, because it's a hedge against inflation. Like, if you look at the purchasing power of the dollar over time, the more money we print, like in the red here, this red line represents how much money is in circulation, and the dollar chart here is our purchasing power. So the more money they print and put into the system, the less our money is worth to buy things, because, you know, it's kind of a hard concept to grasp. But if you have something that's worth, you know, if there's X amount of dollars in the system and something's worth $1, and then you double the amount of money in the system, then it should take double the amount to buy the same thing. And that's basically so then that thing becomes $2, and that's inflation. So, we're constantly printing money. The Fed tells us that 2% inflation is a good thing. So it's good for you to lose 2% of your buying power every year. So if you're saving dollars, you're just saving value in something that's deteriorating over time. And it's only gotten worse. I mean, the past couple of years, we've seen upwards of 10% inflation, which, if you actually look into what is in the CPI index, I mean, that's just a totally rigged number anyway at this point. You know, if you just look at housing and gas and things that we actually do need, like food, gas, and housing, then it's a lot worse than 10%, or at least it was. Now it's gotten better. But, you know, it's just classic manipulation of numbers where they throw a bunch of shit into the basket that's actually doing better. You know, it hasn't gone up that much, so that it brings that average down, and then they can say, oh, look, inflation's only 10%. But, like, it doesn't make sense to us because we're struggling. Well, it's because of inflation and because of all the money printing we just did over the past few years. This has been accelerated, and the dollar's lost a lot of purchasing power. So, what does that tell us? So, money that can be printed endlessly and doesn't have a fixed supply will go down in value, and that's another reason why Bitcoin is valuable, is because there's only so much of it. The government can't control this. They can't print it endlessly. There's only so much of it. So if you move your money into this, it's safe, basically. The other thing to talk about is the halving that happens, which is kind of key to understanding the cycles that go on in crypto, because everybody gets freaked out by the price volatility, but realistically, it's not really that volatile. If you hold it for more than 4 years, you're going to be in profit, basically, because it is a depreciating asset, meaning that it goes up in value over time rather than everything else we own, which inflates over time, like our dollars. So if you take a look at the chart of Bitcoin, long story short, without using the actual numbers here, it's basically, people will say it crashed by 90% because it'll go from here down to here. And sure, it crashed 90%, even worse that time, right? But it started here. So without using the actual numbers, it's basically, going 1 to 1,000 and then going back down to $100, and then $100 to 10,000 down to 1,000. In each of these scenarios, if you take $1 and it goes to 1,000, you're up 1,000x your money. And now it goes back down to $100. People are saying, oh, it's down 90%. This is volatile, but you're doing way better than the dollar. If you bought here, you're still 100x your money. And then the same thing happened again, $100 to 10,000. You just, 1,000x your money again, or 100x your money. What is that? 100x. And then it goes back down by 90% again, and then people are like, oh, it's down 90%, and it's just going to keep doing this. And the reason why this cycle keeps happening is because of the miners and what's built into Bitcoin's protocol. So what Satoshi put into Bitcoin is every 4 years, the amount of Bitcoin that the miners get for processing one of those blocks is cut in half. And you can literally see when the next one is. It's going to be in 4 years, because we just had one on May 10th. And there's been 4 of these. It happens every 4 years. We had one on the 10th of May. We had one in 2020. We had one in 2016, which isn't listed here. And we also had one in 2012. And what happens when the halving occurs is the amount that the miners get is cut in half. So when they process a block, they would get X amount of Bitcoin. When the halving happens, it's cut in half. So what ends up happening is, for the miners to stay profitable, the price basically has to double at that point. So what ends up happening is none of the miners sell for anything less than they'll just hold their Bitcoin until it becomes profitable to sell again at those prices. So it naturally goes to about half, or naturally to about double what the price was at before the halving happened. So every cycle, every 4 years, the price should at least double. In my opinion, everything past doubling, like we just had a halving now, I think it's safe to say it'll go to, 120,000 a coin. Everything past that is speculation until the next halving. It could very likely go way higher than that. But fundamentally, because of the halving and the profitability of maintaining all the mining operations to process the transactions, it's going to double at least for that to stay the same. And the reason, you might say, why? Well, how is that guaranteed? How is the price guaranteed to go up? Well, the miners will just continue to operate and just hoard their Bitcoin while other people speculate. And because they're hoarding it, less is on the market, and now people are willing to buy more. Adoption continues to grow. And the supply has basically been cut in half, the incoming supply, and the demand, even if it remains the same, the price will go up with basic supply and demand. But demand is growing exponentially. We just got ETFs and all this other stuff going on. And they just cut the incoming supply yet again. So it will definitely affect the price. Now, another thing I wanted to talk about in this video with Bitcoin is just what is money in general. And how did we get here? And why is it important to have something that's uncontrolled, unmanipulatable, decentralized so it can't be destroyed, and have a global market that everyone can escape inflation and deflating currencies so people can actually save money and get out of poverty. This is doing a lot of good things all at once. And it kind of takes an understanding of like what money is right now, right? So money in general, when we first started trading goods a long time ago, before money was even created, people would just trade goods, right? They would trade some tomatoes for some corn or something, right? But no one had a way to save money. You couldn't save tomatoes because they go bad, right? So we created a physical thing that didn't deteriorate, that we could save, and we all agreed upon that was worth value. And it was many objects throughout history. There's records of people using shells or rocks and stuff but eventually we got to shiny gold rocks in the ground, which is gold. We all found that those were hard to find, really rare, really good. And that's what we decided to use as a store of value, was gold. So then we started saving in gold. Well, once we saved a bunch of money in gold, it became hard to carry it around, and people could steal your gold and rob you of everything, all your savings. So then we created banks, which was a vault that held your gold for you safely for a fee, and they issued you pieces of paper that you could then go trade the pieces of paper with other people and buy things with that said, you have this, this amount, you have the rights to this amount of my shiny rocks in this vault, basically. And then when we took the dollar off the gold standard, it just became pieces of paper, basically. There wasn't anything in the vaults anymore, so the bank was just holding paper for us, which already doesn't make much sense, but it gets even worse. Because then they were still required to hold the amount of money that you have in the bank, in paper, or in some physical form. But the way the banks make their money is they lend out your money. As they get more money in, they lend it out to collect interest on it. So eventually they were allowed to only hold 70% of your physical stuff and 50%, all the way down to 30% physical money in the bank. So they only actually have 30% of your money not lent out before the pandemic. Now it's 0%. Now they can just lend out everything, and there's nothing actually in the bank. If everyone went to withdraw their money right now out of any major bank, there would be just bank runs everywhere, because none of it's actually in there at all anymore. It's all just a big scheme, basically. So, and the worst part of it is that they used to give us interest. They used to lend out our money for 25% and give us at least half, like 15%. Now they give you 0.05%. So now we're giving our money to these vaults that are holding nothing for us, because it's all digital anyway. We're doing it on our phone at this point anyway. We never even go to the physical location, but then they lend out those digital numbers for 25%, give you 0.05%, and if we all went and withdrew our money, it's not even there. So it's just a giant scheme, and then there's a bunch of fees and credit, and to dive into that's a whole other topic. But it's basically a giant scheme that's broken and doesn't work, and It's just robbing the people. It's a leech on society that we no longer need. And that whole broken system is exactly why Bitcoin was created, because the housing crisis happened in 2008 because of this scheme collapsing on itself, and the government came in and bailed all of them out because they said the banks were too big to fail. And what that did was it consolidated all the money into the banks that were too big to fail, and all the other banks went out of business. And now we have giant behemoth banks that are basically on the verge of failure. We're starting to see bank runs again, and they're still doing their schemes. And now if you go into that, you know, the bank borrows money from the Federal Reserve, who also lends it to the government, and it's just it's a giant scheme. It's amazing that it's even still going at this point. But it will inevitably collapse, most likely. And when that happens, it's probably going to be even worse than 2008. Because now the banks that'll fail are even bigger. And also, a scary fun fact for you, when the 2008 crisis happened, there were bank bailouts. The government gave the banks money. Well, after that, they said, nope, not again. We're going to do bank bail-ins next time, which was signed into law, which you can also read about if you Google it. Which means that your money is what's going to bail them out. So, technically, everything under $250,000, because if you go to your bank window next time you're at the bank, and you read the FDIC insurance claim on the window, it says up to $250,000 is insured. So anything above that is basically free game for them to use in a bank bail-in. But I wouldn't even trust them with that FDIC insurance, personally. But technically, that should be safe. Should be. So yeah, these are all the reasons why a money that is global and we can all put our value into to grow steadily over time is important. It's uncontrolled, uncorruptible, unprintable by our corrupt, overreaching government, basically. So, these are all the reasons why this is important. So, long story short, it's important because it's the first global asset that anyone can invest in and escape their corrupt financial system and put their value into something that will grow over time instead of being inflated away over time. It's also decentralized, so it's indestructible, basically, and uncorruptible. It's not controlled or owned by anyone either, so they can't print it endlessly or, seize it from you somehow, or, they can't steal it from you, they can't tax it away from you unfairly, they can't control it, they can't destroy it. It's owned by the people. And that's what they hate about it, is that they can't control it, because they want you to stay in this system that they're going to inflate away, which is absolutely ridiculous. And the worst part is that they'll hand out money to people, and most people don't understand the money that we use every day, so they don't understand that by handing it out to people, they're actually causing inflation, which is a hidden tax on the people that, everyone who owns assets, all the rich people who own houses and stocks and all those things, they're valued in dollars. So the more they print of dollars, the more those things are to buy because of inflation. So all their assets go up in price, and, the common person who just took the stimulus check and doesn't have any money invested, all the prices just go up anyway, and that money's gone before they know it, and it's just a complete joke, honestly. But it could change the entire world. This one simple concept could change the entire world. It could also fix a lot of the problems in the world, like right now, our economy is built upon always growing. Stocks always got to go up because our investors got to make money. They got money put in there. They want it to grow over time and beat inflation. All stocks have to grow by at least 2% a year. Otherwise, they're just losing money to inflation, right? So now companies have monthly subscriptions on everything, and all the shit that we have is just built to break eventually, because then you have recurrent buyers because they buy it again instead of making things that last forever, because then their chart would drop down after everyone owns everything. They need to build stuff that breaks over time so that they constantly have people buying, and the number keeps going up because it needs to beat inflation. And then you look at housing, and housing has just become, it should be something that we just have because people need a place to live, but it's not. It's an investment vehicle for people with tons of money, because that is something everybody needs, and it grows in value over time, which also beats inflation. Which is just absolutely ridiculous that that's even a thing. Not to say that people shouldn't own houses, but people just have money sitting in houses because it's the safest asset right now. Bitcoin could change all of this, because it's already just people parking their digital numbers and stuff so that their money grows over time instead of being devalued by inflation. That would be like rich people and anybody with money parking money into groceries so that it grows over time. And then groceries just become completely unaffordable for anyone, and no one can eat. I mean, that's basically what's happening with our housing market. Why not just have everyone park their money in some digital nothing that grows over time? Like, it just makes sense. Like, that's already what we're doing, but it's just fucking up our entire world, because all these things need to come, we need to keep growing over time. Like, if stocks didn't have to grow all the time, then we wouldn't need all this junk. The environment would be better off. We wouldn't have people selling shit that breaks after 5 years on purpose, so that we just have landfills filled with, all this shit. Or cell phone companies releasing a new phone every year because they need sales to go up. Like, they could just update the phone that you have, and we could just keep the phones. And you know how many phones are in landfill? Like, Bitcoin could fix so many things. It seems like such a simple concept. If you just, most people just see it as some digital nothing and it's a scam. But if you really learn about what our money is and how everything works in our economy, and it's insane how many things that this one simple idea can fix at the same time. It can save people from inflation. It's something anyone in the globe can purchase. It's incorruptible, uncontrollable money that the government can't seize from you. It could become the investment vehicle to help the housing market and get people off the streets so that housing becomes affordable again, and help our markets so that people aren't just manipulating stocks. Like, I mean, look at the valuation on things like Tesla. Like, it's just like, when I look at the markets, it's just ridiculous. Like, Tesla should not be, like, a lot of these companies should not even be as high as they are, but people are speculating on them, and they're just, it's just a whole racket at this point. It needs to be completely reformed. And that's what is happening. That slowly but surely, that is what's happening. There's honestly so many different concepts going on all at the same time. It's hard to formulate it into a simple explanation, because it could completely transform our money as we know it, investing as we know it, the entire world as we know it, and then crypto in general, like decentralized peer-to-peer systems. It's also the evolution of the internet at the same time. Like, you'll hear people talking about Web3, and when we first had the internet, if you look at the history of the internet, when it first came out, like, they weren't even web browsers. They weren't even search engines. You just had to know the URL in order to even find the site you were looking for. And then we had search engines, and then eventually websites came out that like let us build on the websites and do our own thing on them, which was like Facebook, MySpace, all that stuff. And then, we had WordPress, which started to allow us to create our own websites. But we were always working within, kind of like a box that they created for us. But then peer-to-peer stuff came around, which allowed us to just trade with each other over the internet. And peer-to-peer systems are going to take over everything. It's going to get rid of middlemen in every single business. Literally, the banks are the big middlemen that are going to go, because they're a useless leech on society at this point that does not need to exist. But middlemen all across the board are probably going to disappear because of this invention. And it's just like anything else in history, where all the things that are being replaced are fighting to survive. And that's why you see all this pushback from the government and banks. The banks own the government, basically. All the money. I mean, not to get into, this is a really deep topic, because there's so much power and influence behind this, trying to fight it, because they're at risk of being replaced by something better for all of us that they don't make money off of. So there's a lot of pushback against it. We're up against the biggest crime syndicates of all time, like the banks. Like they're they get, if you look at the history of banks in general and the crimes that they've committed, like none of them ever go to jail. They're literally bailed out by the government when they collapse the entire market, and they steal from us every day, and they're caught doing all these other crimes, money laundering, you name it, and they just get a fine and everything's okay. Like, that's what we're up against here. That's who we're trying to put out of business to make society better. And it's going to be a battle, but they're going to inevitably lose, because this thing is a virus. It's a decentralized network. Like, they cannot destroy it. They can try to attack the companies that are bridging us from this network to theirs. They can attack the bridges, but there's no way that they can actually attack the network itself. It's impossible, because it's controlled and owned by nobody, not even us. We can just use it, and they can as well. And this is why they hate it. So it's revolutionizing our money, the internet. It'll get rid of middlemen. It could be a new investment vehicle, which could fix so many other things in the world. It's doing a lot of things all at once. And if you don't already have some money in the game here, I would highly recommend getting out of the broken, corrupt fiat system, or at least partially get out of it, and move into something that is finite, not corruptible, not controllable. It can't be seized from you. That's another big thing, is that, you don't like the taxes somewhere, you can just leave and bring all your Bitcoin with you in a digital wallet. All you need is your seed phrase written down somewhere, and you have all your money. If you have your money stored in gold in a vault in the US, good luck getting away. Like, you're not going, like, you can't go anywhere. And people will think like, oh, that's a bad thing. But like, that's not a good thing. That's freedom of choice and money. There's more and more surveillance on our money. Like, the bank won't even let you withdraw a certain amount of cash without giving a reason. Like, why the hell do I have to give you a reason to take out my own money? That's ridiculous. And it's just getting over-controlled, overtaxed. They're taxing Venmo now. All this ridiculousness to fund this crazy budget that's just out of control, and no one can fix it. And now they're just trying to steal from us to pay off this nonsense. Like, it's just, Put your money into something that you have control over, that can't be seized and is not controlled or owned by the government, and you can go anywhere in the world with it. You don't like the tax laws in the US? Leave. Bring all your money with you. Go somewhere else. No one can steal this from you. You can leave it in your wallet and go wherever you want, and no one can do anything about it. And the freedom of, like, your money is your freedom. If you don't have money, you can't do anything. If they freeze your accounts, you can't do anything. How are you going to buy a plane ticket? Like, and that's what we saw with the truckers in Canada. They froze all their accounts, and you know what they started using? Bitcoin. So, you know, this is really powerful stuff that is really, you know, in today's day and age with how corrupt and awful things are, it's really liberating to see something created that really can free us from a lot of this nonsense that we otherwise would be forced to be in. And another thing that you'll probably see in the near future is CBDCs, central bank digital currencies, from the banks, which is basically taking blockchain technology, but they're going to put it on a centralized network. So the same way that you can go and, you know, type in your Bitcoin address into a block explorer, which you may not know what any of that is, but all the transactions on Bitcoin are all open. You know, you can see all the transactions. You can, if you find somebody's wallet address, you can search that wallet address and see everything they've ever done with that. So, of course, that's why the government wants KYC at all the bridges to your bank and out of your bank, so that they can follow where you move your money and then try to steal money from you in taxes. But if they don't know your address, they can't find anything. It's just anonymous transactions on the network. But the government wants to issue CBDCs, which use that same open ledger technology, although it won't be open. It'll just be a ledger that they can see all the transactions everywhere and trace and track everything, but it'll be on a centralized network that they could freeze, control. I mean, that's an absolute nightmare. That as soon as a CBDC is created, Bitcoin's value will absolutely skyrocket, because, you know, right now we still have cash. I can still give $20 to somebody, and the government's not going to come over and steal some of it. But when we move to a CBDC, I mean, they're already taxing, you know, things like Venmo and Zelle, and I mean, it's just absolutely ridiculous. Like, our forefathers are rolling over in their graves with how much we're getting taxed these days when we created this country, getting away from all this bullshit. But when a CBDC launches, that is going to really make Bitcoin appealing, because it will be the only other option. Right now we still have cash, so, you know, it's not, you know, if you're smart, you see the writing on the wall, and you're probably already in Bitcoin. But most people, they don't see the real world issue yet, because it hasn't, the switch hasn't been flipped yet. But we've seen precursors to it slowly being rolled out, and sure enough, they plan to release a CBDC. You're starting to hear politicians talking about it, and it's coming, but it's very different than Bitcoin. Bitcoin is that distributed open ledger, but it's decentralized. They can't control it. They can't seize your money. You own your own money in your own wallet, and no one can take it, control it, print it endlessly. CBDCs is the opposite. They still have blockchain technology, which they can see all the transactions, but then they would be able to control it, seize it, do whatever they want with it. Then if they eliminate cash and put us all in a CBDC, that's going to make a lot more people interested in something like Bitcoin. So that's something to think about as well. Anyway, I wanted to make this video shorter, but there's just so much to cover. I just kind of dove into it without any plan. But I hope this all makes sense. Leave a comment if you have questions. But basically, you know, it's a permissionless, which means you can do whatever you want with it, basically. Uncontrolled, unowned system of money that's finite, so it's deflationary, goes up in value over time. So you can save in it. And it's a hedge against inflation. It's global. You can go anywhere in the world with it. It's a very useful thing to have. And I hear a lot of people, people are very ignorant to what our money even is in the traditional system, and they think Bitcoin's a scam. And that just is laughable, but at the same time sad to me, because it's the opposite. Like, people are scared to put their money into Bitcoin. I'm scared to take my money out of Bitcoin. Like, I don't want to leave Bitcoin, because what am I going to sell it for? I'm going to sell it for stocks that are manipulated by Wall Street. I mean, sure, I guess that's stable as long as the economy is good, but the economy doesn't even look good. I mean, our country's going to shit. I mean, I could put it in real estate. That's probably the only thing I'd consider selling any of it for, is like a house to live in. I'm definitely not going to just put it into dollars, because that's just being deflated away and is completely controlled and manipulated. There's no better place to have your money. I mean, look at this ridiculous chart. We're up. I don't even know what number this is. Like, and it's only going to keep going up. Like, sure, we'll peak again in this cycle, and then we'll crash by like 90%. But it won't go as low as it was here again, and then we'll be on to another cycle. And demand is just going to continue to grow. Supply is going to continue to be cut every 4 years, the incoming supply. And it's finite, so it's going to continue to just grow in value. This is what you want to save in. And it's not to say that we won't have fiat junk money, We'll probably always have dollars. Maybe eventually there'll be only like 4 currencies in the world, or 4 fiat money systems. Who knows how long it'll take for all of them to dissolve and collapse. But it doesn't matter, Bitcoin doesn't need to take over. Like, I don't need to go and buy shit with Bitcoin. That doesn't matter, because if I make $1 in a day and I spend it in the same day, it hasn't had time to devalue from inflation, so it doesn't matter. But if I want to save money, I can't leave it in dollars. I got to put it in something else, which is why you have Bitcoin. So Bitcoin is like the world's savings account, which is basically like the closest thing to digital gold. That's what it does. It's already functioning as what it's supposed to. It's growing over time as a place to save your money instead of just getting destroyed by inflation. You don't need to go and spend it anywhere. Spend your shit dollars and your fiat currency. Spend that, and anything that you want to save, convert it into Bitcoin and hold it long term, or stocks. I'm not saying put everything in. Personally, I would do like 50-50. The way I see crypto is like global market. Bitcoin especially, but the entire crypto market, they're all global. So anyone in the world can buy these. And I think it's the future of finance and technology, and all this peer-to-peer technology is going to take over a lot of things. So I'm like 50-50 right now in, traditional finance and stocks and real estate and things like that. And then 50% global digital economy that's coming. And it's already here, basically. And then within this portfolio, I'm also like, out of all these other cryptos, like I would do like 50% Bitcoin at least, and then 25% Ethereum and 25% everything else. Maybe even like 75% Bitcoin and 25% everything else. But point is that this is the value in Bitcoin. I hear people talking about, whenever I bring it up, it's like, well, what is the intrinsic value of Bitcoin? And, where's their earnings report? And I'm just like, earnings report, man? The stock market is so manipulated and corrupt. Like, who cares? Like, who even cares about an earnings report? Like, it's so stupid. You don't make any money following that shit anyway, unless you already have hundreds of thousands of dollars. Like, just buy index funds and chill if you're going to invest in the stock market. It's so much easier. You don't have to deal with the psychological manipulation of all these people running the markets, basically. Like, there's no earnings report for Bitcoin, man. It's It's decentralized money that's uncorruptible and uncontrollable by our corrupt government. If you know anything about our government, you know that's important to have. And it's decentralized and can never be destroyed. And it's somewhere you can park your money and get away from inflation. And like, what, you can move it anywhere in the world. Like, that's not value. If that's not value, then I don't know what is then, because that seems pretty valuable to me, to have my money stored in something that I know is safe, can't be stolen from me, can't be corrupted, can't be printed endlessly to devalue it. I can move it anywhere in the world. I can send it to somebody if I want. I mean, that's another thing. Inheritance tax. What a joke that is. I can just give my seed phrase to my kids one day, and I don't have to deal with any middleman taking a piece to sign a piece of paper. Like, our financial system's such a joke. Like, if we all just choose to, and that's the big thing there. And I mean, you could put this. You could apply this to so many other things going on in the world right now, but all it takes is for us all to just choose this, and they can't do anything about it. That's the beauty of it. If we just come together, I mean, money is just a consensus. Money right now is only worth something because we all believe that it is. If we just choose to believe in something else that's uncontrollable, there's nothing they can do. So, I'm on board with that. It sounds good to me. Sounds a lot better than what I'm looking at in the traditional market. Something that I have no say and no control in, and you'll just get wrecked by inflation, market manipulation, and all this other BS that goes on from the government, and like something completely anonymous that's just a protocol that we can all interact with, that's not controlled, not owned by anyone. I can move anywhere in the world and save my money in something separate from this broken economy that's just inflated away and protected from inflation. Like, that is so valuable to me. And if you see it, once you see it, you can't unsee it. And yeah, I hope this opened your eyes. But, not financial advice, of course, but I would definitely have a decent amount of my money in the new decentralized savings account of the world. And with that, I'll end this video. Peace out till next time.